Good afternoon, everyone. This is Prescott City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 8th. We'll have introductions and announcements if the Mayor Pro Tem has anything to share with us.
You better believe it. Today is an exciting day, for it is Election Day. So please do not forget to vote. And you may have also noticed that there is smoke in the area over the last several weeks, first in the Granite Basin area and more recently around Goldwater Lake. Fire managers on the Bradshaw Ranger District of the Prescott National Forest have been taking advantage of favorable weather conditions and conducting slash pile burning in these areas. This is part of an overall plan to manage the forest and help reduce the impact of potential wildland fires in the Prescott Basin. They are also going to be working on the fire break protecting Prescott on the southwest side. Due to a special grant, they are concentrating on the Prescott area because we are high risk. So I want to thank our friends at the Prescott National Forest for their continued work to keep our forest healthy and safe. Remember, citizens can do their part in helping to reduce the risk of wildland fires by clearing their homes of brush and vegetation that grows too close to their homes. To learn more, go to yavapifirewise.org. And congratulations are in order for the Economic Development Division in the City Manager's Office. Recently, they took home a Golden Prospector Award from the Arizona Association of Economic Development for the marketing and an advertising campaign entitled Discover Business Unusual. This campaign was conceived and created by Heart and Soul Media, an advertising agency led by Brad Casper. It tells the story of how businesses who move to Prescott will find that it's not just business as usual, but indeed Prescott is not the unusual, but in a good way. Our quality of life, our hometown values, and support for our business community make Prescott a bit, well, unusual. This multimedia campaign features stunning videos and testimonials from businesses who chose Prescott and are glad they did. To see the videos and the campaign, go to the City Economic Development website, which is prescottbusiness.com. Good job. And now winter is coming. Be prepared. So let's talk about the pneumonia vaccine. Pneumonia vaccine can prevent pneumococcal disease. It is not an mRNA-modified vaccine, and it can be life-saving. Besides pneumonia, pneumococcal bacteria can also cause ear infections, sinus infections, meningitis, infections of the blood, or sepsis. And anyone can get pneumococcal disease, but children under 2 years old and people with certain medical conditions or other risk factors and adults 65 years or older are at the highest risk. So what can you do? Adults 65 and older who have not already received a pneumococcal conjugate vaccine should receive either a single dose of PCV15 followed by a dose of PPS-V23 or just a single dose of PCV20. Your health provider can give you more information, and you can also get this vaccine at your local supermarket, or you can give the health department a call. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll now have an invocation from Pastor Clovis Barnett of the Prescott Cornerstone Church, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance from Councilwoman Cantelmi.
Let's pray. Father, we just thank you for the privilege it is for us to live in such a great city. We thank you for Prescott and just its beauty and again, just the privilege that we have to live here, and we just thank you for that. We also thank you that we live in a country that is based upon democracy, and it is Election Day, and we thank you for that, and we just pray your hand of protection upon all our elections, and we trust you with those elections and those who will be elected today. We thank you for our elected officials. Especially, we thank you for our local officials. I thank you for our mayor and our council. God, I just pray that your hand would be upon them, give them great wisdom and insight, help them to make decisions that are in the best interest of the entire city. and just guide them through this process even today as they go through this meeting. Give them great wisdom. I thank you that we live in a city that would want to begin a meeting like this with prayer. And we just give you glory. I thank you again for all who are a part of this, for all of our people who work for the city. I pray that you'd be with them, Lord, and help them, Lord, as they seek to do their jobs. We give you all the credit and the glory for this, and pray this in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
And if you'll stand now, stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll have a roll call, please.
Mayor Good,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing,
Here.
Councilwoman Fatami,
Here.
Councilman Montoya,
Here.
Councilman Moore,
Here.
Councilman Sischka,
Here.
and Councilman Tenney.
Yes.
All are present.
Thank you. We'll now move into proclamations. The Patient Blood Management Awareness Week. Councilman Shishka.
Thanks, Mayor. So are there any representatives from YRMC? Hi. So please come up. And there are only 6 whereases on this one today. This is a proclamation for Patient Blood Management Awareness Week, November 7th through 11th, 2022. Whereas the City of Prescott is pleased to join Dignity Health from the Yavapai Regional Medical Center, located in our beautiful city, as it celebrates Patient Blood Management Awareness Week, November 7th through the 11th, 2022. Whereas Dignity Health Yavapai Regional Medical Center is staffed by professionals with a commitment to improving patient outcomes through optimal blood management. And whereas patient blood management is the appropriate provision and use of blood, its components and derivatives, and strategies to reduce or avoid the need for a blood transfusion. And whereas Patient Blood Management Awareness Week speaks to the concerns of every person to have the best health care available to them, respecting individual preferences and beliefs, and continuing education of healthcare professionals to provide that care. Whereas Dignity Health Yavapai Regional Medical Center is staffed by professionals with a commitment to improving patient outcomes and educating the medical community about the best practices in blood management. And whereas number 6, we commend the members of Dignity Health Yavapai Regional Medical Center for extending themselves in service to others according to their commitment of improving patient outcomes. Now, therefore, Phil Good, Mayor of the City of Prescott, does recognize the week of November 7th through 11th, 2022 as Patient Blood Management Awareness Week.
All right.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Sischka and Mayor Good and Council. We really appreciate the fact that you're recognizing Patient Blood Management Awareness Week, and we hope in the months ahead that we'll have a good opportunity to do more education in the way of a public forum to explain blood management. We all want our knees and hips to work right, we check our hearts, our kidneys, our brains, but blood management is just as vital. We want to take care of that organ too. And so that's what patient blood management is about. That means we address anemia. We don't want to walk around anemic. And our annual labs are really important in that area. We also want to make sure we optimize blood health before any upcoming surgeries, if that's possible. And we realize that affects the elderly, pregnant women, women of reproductive age, but also we're learning more about how it affects children, whether it's through food insecurity or from what we call hidden hunger, where they're really not getting proper nutrition in the foods that they are eating. And that really affects behavioral health and productivity into adulthood. So these are all important things. We're really happy at Dignity Health Yavapai Regional Medical Center to be a part of this important work in our community. And if you'd like to learn more information, please visit the Patient Blood Management Medical Services tab at our website. And there's all kinds of good stuff for you to learn there. Thank you again. Very much.
All right, the next presentation is a recognition of the Citizens Academy graduates. So all you graduates, please step forward.
Yeah, if you want to say okay. Hi, I'm Amber Fraser. I'm with the City Manager's Office with the City of Prescott. The City of Prescott hosts a Citizens Academy every year, a couple times a year, that serves residents by exposing them to city departments and operations. This program is intended to provide participants with insights into how local government works, promote open lines of communication, and offer clear understanding of our services and how we affect everyone's everyday life in Prescott. So thank you to all of our graduates who are here today. Thank you to our council, our mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, and we do actually have a couple of graduates on our council. So I'll let Mayor Pro Tem say a few words first.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say congratulations, and I am a graduate of the Academy, year 2019. So I really appreciate all the hard work that you put into this, and I understand we do have a few graduates that aren't here today because they are already involved in, since today is Election Day, in the polling station. So they're already starting to participate in doing their civic duty. Thank you.
Well, I know at the beginning of this academy, I made this statement that I'm sure that all of you will find the academy and the content of it very valuable and have a much broader acceptance and understanding of the scope of responsibilities, services that are provided to the city. And I certainly thank you for persevering, completing the program. And as we talked at the study session today, we're trying to see if we have the opportunity to free up some positions on our boards, commissions, and committees so that you can continue to volunteer and make a contribution to our city. So I applaud you, and I'm so proud that you all completed the program. And I think we even mentioned that our next program scheduled for January, February next year is already fully enrolled, and we have a waiting list. So I think it's great that all of you have completed the program, and we'll call you up, receive your certificates, and then you can all line up and we'll have a big group photo. So thank you.
All righty, Chris and Cindy Bailey. Please come forward. And we'll just line up here. Yep. Thank you. And Kathy Blake and Kimberly Cole. And Kathy Craig. And James Fields and Catherine Grisham were unable to attend, unable to join us today, along with Scott Jackson. Robert Jones. And Patrick Kuykendall also was not able to make it today. And we have Margaret Morgan and Valerie Nelson. And Leslie Neiman, and unfortunately Donna Osborne's not here today also, and Beverly Stephenson. Stevenson, I'm sorry. And we have a couple of storms, Kirk Storm and Jill Storm. And Carolyn Watt. And not, last but not least, Eileen Wolf and Ed Wolf.
And then we'll get together for a picture. We're probably going to have to scooch in a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to see John up there. He's our fantastic photographer.
Move towards the center.
We're going to do a couple of them. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile, you're so happy.
Congratulations.
I remember speaking to one of our local organizations, and Kathy said, "Can you tell us what the city does?" And I said, "Why don't you join the academy?" And now she knows. Thank you all. All right, now we'll move on to the open call to the public.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement. Residents may comment and address council regarding matters that are not included on the posted agenda during the call to the public. If you wish to speak, please complete a green speaker card and submit it to me prior to the meeting being convened. As a reminder, speakers are limited to 4 minutes, and the call to the public will be 40 minutes in total. I do not have any green speaker cards. Is there anyone that wishes to address council regarding something that is not on the posted agenda? Okay.
All right, well, it's great that we have the opportunity for transparency, and the public is always welcome to address council should they have that interest. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody on the council want to pull any items from consent? Councilman Montoya?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to pull item J, please.
And I'd also like to pull item E. E is in elephant.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for the rest of the consent agenda other than item E and, is it J?
J.
J.
Item J.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda items A through I, with the exception of item E.
And J.
Item E and J.
J is actually outside the range of items A through I.
Okay. Really, when did that happen?
It's been that way for a while, but
That's
at
right.
any rate,
He's a Rhodes Scholar. Okay. So I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Councilman Tenney.
anytime.
Oh, that was great. We need a little levity for occasion.
There you go.
All right, well, Councilman Montoya, you wanted to pull item E?
That was Mayor Pro Tem, actually.
You want to start with E or J?
A, you wanted both of them?
No, I wanted J, she wanted E.
Very well.
I'm going to go alphabetical.
Please proceed.
Okay.
Item E.
Item E. The reason why I pulled this, it's involving the purchase of 2 light-duty pickup trucks. And it says in the packet, several light-duty trucks to transport staff, hand tools, and light power tools to and from project sites throughout the city. And, you know, our staff covers a pretty big area all the way out to Chino and probably beyond. And I was looking at the packet and noticed that these trucks have V8 gas engines. And I thought, you know, is that kind of a little overkill to have one's a full ton and the other one is a 3/4 ton to just transport a staff member with some hand tools? Because over the years, as I've been walking the local neighborhoods, I've noticed big full-size city pickup trucks with one person driving around, checking, I don't know, like the pump stations. And in casual conversation, they're like, yeah, this is what I have to drive around in. So I was just going to say maybe this is a good opportunity to, in the future, start a conversation, because the gas prices are always in the news, and maybe start looking at fuel efficiency, some hybrids and some EVs for our vehicle fleet. And I was just concerned about these trucks because in further conversation with Public Works, they're going to be flexible, used for like maybe a snow plow attached to the front or hauling gravel. So they're not really, these trucks are really going to be used for a lot more than a city staff member. But that going ahead, if they are going to be used year-round for, like for snow days, shouldn't they be 4x4s instead of 4x2s?
Mayor and Council, good afternoon. Janet Ramsey, Public Works. And I have with me Bryant Scott. He's the Superintendent of Public Works Street Maintenance. I'm sure you're familiar with him. So a couple of things. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for allowing us to explain this. In this particular case, the term light duty is really a term of art. That's not the particular case in this situation. And I'll let Brian address that a little bit more. But I wanted to talk just briefly about your other concerns with regard to using the right vehicle for the right job. I think on behalf of the city and especially on behalf of Public Works, we definitely agree with that. And so I'm newcomer, but I'm also just got involved in the Fleet Advisory Review Board, which is a team of cross-departmental folks, everyone who uses a fleet vehicle, that we sit together and we discuss the appropriate use, the appropriate time, and the appropriate application for different vehicles throughout the city. So we are doing those kinds of things. I spoke with Justin Hill, who is the fleet manager, and he talked about some of the uses and applications for different vehicles. And he's also very interested in doing some evolutionary changes to the fleet as far as the right time, the right place, the right application, of course. In this case, more specifically, I'll let Brian address that. But that's not the case. And as you alluded, this is not truly a light-duty vehicle. So I'll let Brian tell you what we do use those for.
So both of these trucks, again, the F-350, the one-ton truck, is a replacement for our drainage crew. That truck is outfitted with a utility bed that packs around with it a multitude of tools used every day in the operation of maintenance on our drainage system. It also pulls heavy equipment in that skid steer or our newest addition, the remote control skid steer. So that has to have a heavier application. The 3/4 ton is basically or mostly utilized by our right-of-way crew. So it will transport 3 to 5 employees at a time to various job sites around the city, mainly doing landscape type things, right? A multitude of weed eaters, backpack blowers, chainsaws, things like that are hauled with that truck every day. As far as the snow operations goes, they are used during those operations in that they can transport people to and from different equipment. Of course, during snowstorms, we have a lot of breakdowns. We have to be able to utilize trucks like this to get around. They don't actually plow snow, but they're used daily, every day. And light duty, probably not the right word. And we'll keep that in mind going forward, of course, when we write future memos. But that's in a nutshell what they're used for daily, much heavier than light duty.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the extra information. It's very important that we have a well-maintained, efficient fleet that is flexible for all the different uses. And but I would like to point out that hybrids might be something that we might look at when we do the assessment. Maybe not the plug-in ones, but the gas-powered hybrids, similar to like a Toyota RAV4 all-wheel drive. There's many other kinds. And maybe sometime in the future, some plug-in EVs if it becomes cost-effective.
Thank you for that. Certainly under consideration and something that I will address with Justin from the Fleet Advisory, or with the Fleet Advisory Review Board. Did you have any other questions, please?
No, thank you. Are we allowed to have public comment?
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that Councilman Montoya and I recently had the privilege and opportunity to do a tour of the Big Chino, the area where that well field would potentially be someday. And that's like a 23-mile dirt road that is not maintained out north and west of Paulden, and we took a vehicle like you just described that took several of us out into those conditions, and I imagine that you need these heavy-duty trucks for this terrain and these purposes because you have employees going out there on a regular basis from Prescott, 23 miles northwest of Paulden, to check on our 4,500-acre property that the city owns and maintains out there for future water use. So I think it's important that we have these vehicles that are capable of meeting a variety of demands and needs as required on a daily basis.
All right, is there any public comment?
There actually is, Mayor. David McKinney.
I'd like to make sure that the comment is related to this particular item, not about fleet maintenance or future designs of our fleet or the components of it. So if you have a comment about this this item on the agenda, please proceed.
Well, I just wanted to, my name is Dave McKinney. I live at 1940 Paradise Lane in Prescott, and I'm representing both Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance, NASCA, and Prescott Electric Vehicle Association, PEVA. And I just wanted to put in a vote towards the city considering electric vehicles where they make sense in their fleet. NASCA currently has campaigns underway in Flagstaff, Camp Verde, Sedona, Cottonwood, and the Quad Cities, where we're gathering citizen petition signatures for their respective cities to try to have the city councils start the process of converting their fleets to electric, at least with one vehicle where it makes sense. From a financial perspective, a Ford F-150 Lightning, which I think you were looking at Fords, and they're a great vehicle. The Lightning, the Ford F-150 has been the mainstay of Ford for 40 years, and they had to make the Lightning equally as tough and powerful as the F-150. And depending on the battery pack you choose, you get 230 miles between charges or 320 miles between charges. So you could get to that field and back. If you only drove 16,500 miles per year, and the reason I'm using that is Town and Country TV just did a comparison last week. The Lightning will cost approximately $1,100 per year in electricity costs versus more than $4,300 a year in fuel costs. There are approximately 2,000 moving parts in the average internal combustion engine, ICE vehicle, compared to 20 in an EV. So maintenance costs are greatly reduced. EVs typically last twice as long or twice as many miles as an ICE vehicle. Tires, windshield wipers, and windshield wiper fluid are about the only consumables on an EV other than the electricity. Brakes seldom wear out on an EV because of regenerative braking, where the electric motor actually slows the vehicle while capturing energy that charges the batteries in the process. And of course, there are environmental advantages to an EV: no exhaust fumes, no noise. Clean air is good for everybody. 20 years or so ago, Prescott was recognized by the American Lung Association as having some of the cleanest air in the nation, and perhaps we could get back to that level of clean air. EVs do require the installation of charging stations.
Please conclude your remarks.
What's that?
Please conclude your remarks.
Okay. Well, there will be a need for charging stations, but APS is a willing partner in that venture as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Patrick Grady.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Grady, 943 West Rosser Street, representing the Yavapai Climate Change Coalition. I'll be even briefer. So we thank the Mayor Pro Tem for bringing this issue up. Cities across the country are looking at their municipal fleets as a meaningful way to not only impact the environment, but also air quality goals. The draft 2032 Yavapai County Comprehensive Plan speaks to preparing for the future of electric vehicles. Just this past September, our own state Department of Transportation just allocated $27 million for charging stations across the state. APS, as David pointed out, has been an important partner in moving towards more clean and renewable energy. So we're grateful for your leadership and support for the Quad Cities Climate Risk Assessment due out in December. But now's a good time, I think, to start looking at some ways our different Quad Cities can move forward on meaningful steps to reduce our local carbon footprint. So we recommend perhaps going a step further and having a review of our entire fleet and the potential purchase. Again, we recognize that they're not appropriate in every situation, but there's opportunities out there that can benefit our community and can benefit the operating costs of our Public Works Department and our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
That's all, Mayor.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. Mayor, I move that we approve consent agenda item E.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, item J. Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Mostly, I just wanted Brandon to come down here and wear a tie because he's asking for money. I'm just kidding, Brandon.
And he is wearing a tie.
He is wearing a tie. I gave him a hard time. I think he knew. I want to start out by saying I am, from our study session when we brought up this item initially, I'm in big favor of this item. I think it's a great item. And the reason I pulled it is I want to highlight the impact that I think this is going to have for city staff in a very, very positive way. I happened to be at the library the other day. I had a problem with my library card. I happened to talk to one of the managers there, and she actually called this item out as something that was effective to them. I was talking to Brandon about this before we walked in today, and I think it's a huge morale boost, or at least I hope that it will be a huge morale boost for city staff. And I just want to communicate and kind of say one more time that I think everyone on this dais really appreciates the hard work that city staff does, and we certainly think that we want you to feel like we've got your back and that we know that it's a challenging time with inflation, and we're here to help meet that challenge. So thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor Good and City Council. Brandon Nunez, HR Director. I appreciate that, and I can tell you after the last study session, our office received probably a quarter of the workforce reached out to us via phone call, stopping by, email. So I know it was overwhelmingly positive for the organization, the workforce, and they appreciate it.
Very cool. Any other comments or concerns? Well, I think I hear occasionally concerns about increasing compensation and growing the staff. But let's face it, the consequences of inflation are real, and we didn't create this situation. I can think of several people I could point the finger at, but our job is to make sure that our staff continues to be able to provide efficient services to the community, and we're having to make some adjustments in order to be able to retain and recruit the necessary staff members to provide the services that the community and the citizens expect. So with that said, I do have one comment here from Councilwoman Cantelmi.
Yes, I wanted to make sure everybody know, too. I also was approached by several people, and in particular one young lady who called me and said that that this is going to mean the difference between the extra money they've been spending on food because they were such a tight budget and 3 kids in daycare. Between the both of them, this will help them keep their house. They were actually thinking about getting rid of their house. So this is, these are the real impacts to a lot of the people out there in this world we live in with, the raises, the inflation, everything on every level here, especially with the cost of real estate. So I'm happy we're doing it too.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll move to approve item J from the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, we will move on to consent ordinance.
Adoption of ordinance number 2022-1815, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the purchase of real property from the Risk Family Trust for the Green Lane Booster Pump Station and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said purchase.
Do we have any presentation on this, or do we just want to go ahead and approve it?
Look at that.
We don't get a chance to listen to Gwen too often, so welcome.
Yay, it's Gwen's turn, and I'm not wearing a tie. I'm not asking for $1 million, for the record. And I didn't put together a presentation, but I thought there might be questions about this request. So I could just give you a very brief overview if you'd like, Mayor. We're requesting to purchase a piece of property that is located right here on the map. This is Willow Creek Road here, running north and south. This is there's a signal right here, Green Lane. And as it passes Estrella Court, it actually turns into Estrella Road, so the road name changes. But the piece of land we're purchasing is right here on the corner. It's for a future booster pump station to serve the water system. This project was identified in the 2018 Water Wastewater Master Plan that was prepared by Carollo and is supported in the following, the rate study that was done to support that study. The pump station itself will improve water into what we call Zone 48. Zone 48, this is, just to give you a point of reference, this is Yakashba Estates right here. And this is Williamson Valley Road. So you can see that there's only one blue line that comes into this entire area. This is what we call a single feed into an entire zone. So we do not have redundancy in this zone. We have poor pressures because of the elevations in Yakashba Estates, and we have substandard fire flow conditions. At the time that it was built, it met the fire flow condition of 500 gallons a minute. But today, the standard is 1,000 gallons a minute. So by building this pump station here at this corner, we will improve the fire flow capability as well as the pressures into this entire area and bring this entire zone up to the current water standards that are expected in our community. So we talk about projects that are age and condition and projects that are a result of growth. Well, this is an age and condition project. This is a replacement, or I'm sorry, an enhancement to the existing conditions here. It'll also include upsizing this pipe along the way eventually to 12-inch to better serve and better have better quantities of water into this area. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but the item before you today is to purchase the parcel of land from the Risk Family Trust. One of the conditions of the purchase is that we begin design within fiscal year 23, which we are prepared to do, and begin construction by fiscal year 24, which we are also prepared to do. That is in our 5-year capital improvement plan in the city's budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Gwen. I have a question. What do you think just estimate of the total cost of the project for the pump station and the upsizing of the water mains through that area?
So in 2018, when the estimate was prepared, we anticipated it to be around $4 million. But I would tell you that would not be a real number today.
And jog my memory, but isn't Yakashba in the county?
It may very well be, Mayor Pro Tem, but as you know, we serve outside the city limits.
I'm well aware of it.
I believe it is in the county.
It's in the county. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question, Gwen, with the upgrade of the system and the increased pressure so that we can handle 1,000 gallons per minute compared to 500, do you have to upgrade anything beyond bringing that new pipe into the rest of the area to support such a higher, much higher pressure? Or is it just going to be the pump station and that main line?
So that's getting a little bit more technical, and some of that will happen as part of the design. But yes, we anticipate mainline upgrade right here all the way through Green Lane to the pump station site, and then somewhat beyond that. But how far, I can't tell you.
I was just curious. Thank you. I just imagine such an upgrade would probably have a ripple effect. They would have to upgrade other things as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
We'll be going from a 6-inch main in Green to a 12-inch main in Green, so we'll be doubling the capacity.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other comments or concerns? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt consent ordinance item 10A.
Second.
A motion and a second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, we're now to item 11, liquor licenses.
Public hearing and consideration for a new Series 6 bar liquor license application from Andrea Dalman Lekowitz, applicant for Grand Highland Hotel, location 154 South Montezuma Street. The application fees have been paid. The signs have been posted for the required 20 days. Staff has reviewed the applications and determined that they are in compliance, and no public comments have been received. Andrea is on the line if you have any questions, council members.
Well, I know this is for the Medinas. I think they're here in the audience. You want to come up and talk to us about your new location and services?
This one okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Good and City Council. As you know, Medina Hospitality, we recently purchased within the last year.
Can you please state your name and address?
Okay, sorry.
Thanks.
Nick
For the
Medina.
record.
What's your address? 1136 South Hill Drive, Prescott.
And Sarah Medina.
Thanks.
Worked out good. As you know, that we recently purchased the Motor Lodge Hotel, the Grand Highland, and the Prescott Pines Inn. Our idea to improve these properties do include adding a liquor license to it so that we have better control over the liquor situation now. Right now, when we have weddings, these wedding parties are allowed to bring in their own liquor, and so we don't have full control over that. By having our liquor license, not only can we benefit and pay additional taxes to the city, some of these wedding venues, they bring liquor up from Costco down from Phoenix and things like that, and so we'd like to have better control of the situation and shut things down by 10, things like that. So employer-owned staff for more control, things like that. Also, by having a liquor license at the Grand Highland, we'll be able to do community events when it's not open. When we don't have weddings right now, we don't have any use for that space. And so by us being able to offer liquor, we can now do a 4th of July event there, have bands, and open it up to the public, and just be more involved in the community and be able to support the cost associated with that, with some of the liquor sales involved in that. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate that, Nick and Sarah. I mean, the acquisition of those properties on South Montezuma and into White Spar, I think, are really sorely needed. That's a kind of a major entry into the city, and being able to upgrade the facilities, the locations, the standards there, I think, is long overdue. So I appreciate your investment, and I wish you the best of luck in your operations.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Thanks.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second. Motion is second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Mayor, I move to approve liquor license number 207614 for a new Series 6 bar liquor license application for Grand Highland Hotel, location 154 South Montezuma Street.
Second. Motion is second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, we'll move on to item B that's directly connected to item A.
Public hearing and consideration for a new Series 7 beer and wine bar liquor license application from Andrea Delman Lekowitz, applicant for Prescott Pines Inn, location 901 White Spar Road. The application fees have been paid and the signs have been posted for the required 20 days. Staff has reviewed the applications and determined that they are in compliance. No public comments have been received.
Any comments or concerns? I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Mayor, I move to approve liquor license number 207616 for a new Series 7 beer and wine bar liquor license application for Prescott Pines Inn, location 901 White Spar Road.
Second.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Again, Nick and Sarah, congratulations, and thank you for your investment in the city. We wish you great success with your operations. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the regular agenda, item A.
Adoption of resolution number 2022-1843, establishing the Workforce Housing Committee.
Hello, Chelsea.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mayor Pro Tem. As a result of the discussions held at the October 25th study session, this item is coming before you to form a standing committee, Workforce Housing Committee. The proposed resolution has it a 7-member standing committee, and the purpose and mission would be to provide a coordinated effort and central body to research, review, and propose workforce housing solutions and recommendations to council. And the 7 members who would populate this committee would have relevant experience and or be representatives of employer stakeholders. Proposed to have 1-year and 2-year staggered terms. So I'm here for any questions you might have.
Councilman Shishka.
Thanks, Mayor. I've already had a member of the public inquire about how do I get onto this committee, and this person is well qualified. But you mentioned 7 people. Is that people who are dealing with the homeless right now, or is it something different?
So the way the resolution is worded is it's fairly open. However, it would be beneficial to have those with relevant experience and or the employer stakeholders. So for instance, I've been approached by Dignity Health to have a member represent the hospital.
Sure.
Because they're having the same problems. The chamber is also dealing with and having discussions about it, so they've approached us. So really it would be anyone that, like I mentioned, has the relevant experience, maybe real estate broker, maybe construction professional, people that could help come up with these ideas with their experience, and also the folks that have interest in maybe participating through their own organization.
So how would this person apply?
A standing committee?
Yes, so as a standing committee, they would go through the usual process that we do for all of our boards and commissions. Submit an application, council subcommittee on appointments will review those applications and then make recommendations to the balance of council for
So will
appointment.
that be a separate process from our normal boards and commissions appointments?
So if council adopts the resolution today, we will just need to modify our BCC application to include the Workforce Housing Committee and then put that information out that applications are being accepted, and then we can start collecting those.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say and ask the same questions that Councilman Shishka said, but I've already been approached in the community by somebody who's interested in serving on this committee. So I think it's just a testament to the need for this committee and the urgent need for affordable housing in our community. And I'm grateful that as a city we're addressing this and we're going to be forming this committee. So thank you.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Chelsea, I know you've been really involved in this process from the beginning, and you haven't done it alone. There's been a lot of city staff who've been involved in it. So first off, I want to say thank you for the work that you and other members of the city staff have done. I think Councilman Moore is right. We really, this is a testament to kind of the need to address this issue in some meaningful measure. I know that the mayor's been involved in that effort. Councilman Tenney and I have also been working together on it, and I'm glad to see this to fruition. I guess my one concern, I think you're right that it's important that we get people with expertise, but I also think that we probably need to identify and make sure that we're getting a broad cross-section. And I guess what I mean by that is I think that a member from Dignity Health would be appropriate for this committee. But I also wonder if there's someone who might have a unique perspective that doesn't fit the mold of what we would think as someone who would understand what the challenge is with affordable housing. And in my mind, I'm thinking of maybe a restaurateur that has challenges with retaining staff. That might not be something that immediately clicks in our minds as someone who would have a perspective that's valuable on workforce housing. But I think it's, the only challenge I would have is making sure that we're getting a broad cross-section of individuals in this committee, because I do think there's a lot of challenges around it. And I guess one of the things that I think is a concern for me is this problem. There are some immediate headwinds that we're facing right now, as the presentation that we had the last study session talked about. Rising interest rates. We live in a desirable area. People want to move here, and people from all over the country want to move here, and specifically to our immediate west, people want to move here a lot. And so I think there's some issues that we need to have. I will say a concern I have beyond that, the broad cross-section, is I wonder if we've spelled out a clear enough mission for this committee to really kind of tackle these problems in meaningful ways. And I guess what I mean by that is, are we looking for this committee to come to us with things like, there's a concept that I've talked to the city manager about, which is accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. And that could potentially be a fairly hot button issue in this community, depending on how it's developed and talked about. For those of you who aren't familiar with accessory dwelling units, it's the idea of having like what's called a mother-in-law's house or a casita. Other communities in Arizona have tackled that issue. And I guess, so I think there's immediate action that can be done. I think there's short-term action. And I wonder if a standing committee might be a bit premature, if maybe moving forward with an ad hoc committee and allowing that to kind of proof of concept and then develop further from there. That's just me throwing out an idea. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Montoya, and I support your assessment here. I think we're a little premature in establishing a permanent standing committee to deal with this particular issue. It's certainly an important issue. I know that I advocated for a study of some of these manufactured homes that have increased in quality so dramatically over the last few years, looking at our zoning and permitting to be able to allow some of these homes that are normally not considered by lenders for long-term mortgages. I think that's changing. We certainly have a unique environment here with housing in general. We've got rapidly escalating interest rates for mortgages that are putting some people with pretty substantial family incomes almost out of the market. And even for construction of new homes, where we still have a high volatility of materials and components. Now we have an escalating cost of delivering those components to the work site. We have challenges with labor itself. That we're trying to say, can we have some affordable housing for groups of labor workers to be able to construct homes? There's just so many challenging components within the marketplace for affordable or workforce housing, even trying to define what is affordable. Is this for workforce, for the hourly and staff that are actually employed? And even the comments about is it going to apply to try to find more homes for homeless people? There's a lot of variations in what this focus is trying to solve. So I think before we make this a permanent standing committee, we probably ought to be investigating some of these issues, have a better idea of what we're trying to accomplish here before we create another permanent committee for the long term. So I just think there's, I'm a little reluctant to step in and have the government, which is our government, try to determine market forces that are much more dramatic, that are currently kind of working themselves through this dramatic change in our economic environment. So I think being able to maybe make it a ad hoc committee and try to narrow the focus, maybe look at some of these issues that can be done. I mean, we've got the legislature that put in this Airbnb challenge that may even have a component here too. If we add some of these additional opportunities to put a casita on a property and then have it turned into a Airbnb rental. I mean, you talk to the people in Sedona and Page and some of these other cities, they're grappling with a huge change in their local markets because of some of these legislative issues. So again, I think we're a little premature in making this a standing committee. I think a lot of work could be done over the next year or so. And then if an ad hoc committee demonstrates its effectiveness, then we can consider making it a long-term standing committee. Those are my comments, and I think Mayor Pro Tem, you're up next.
Thank you. It says here workforce housing, and to me, workforce is somebody that has a job, and they have a job that's essential to the functioning of our community, and it makes me think fire, police, teachers, service workers, city staff, people who are members of the community and contribute to the community, and to try to work in, as Steve said, he brought up homelessness. I just don't see why we would have homeless people competing for space against a firefighter or a teacher.
If I may.
Could you clarify that?
Yeah, the intent would be for the workforce.
Workforce.
And in all of our research and studies, we did focus on the categories police, fire, teachers, and nurses.
Okay, all righty. Thank you, because this is an issue that communities all across the nation are grappling with, and I really think that we do need a committee. We need to get a start on this and start tackling this very difficult problem.
Councilwoman Cantelmi.
Yes. I just want to make a couple suggestions, because this is an issue that I've been involved in many groups that have talked about this. And, can I just suggest that we move beyond the fact, talking about whether we need this or not? I think there's no question on all fronts we need this. I would like to see a committee compiled of the actual people that can make this happen. Let's talk about real estate agents, construction people, land acquisition, grant writers, designers, to talk about the viability and location finders, so that we can see if this is even something that we can have. We've got Tyler and I have been talking about city-owned properties. That might be some option. The stakeholders coming together are basically, in my opinion, just going to talk about the fact that we need this. I think we're past that now. Maybe what we can do is get together a committee that can do an actual concept drawing, find a location, get a contractor on there to talk about project pricing per square foot, because that makes a big difference where it can slide out of affordability very quickly just in a trust package. So maybe come up with some concepts and get some people in there that come from these pertinent fields so we can move on to the next step.
Councilman Shishka.
Thanks, Mayor. It almost seems like we need a strategic planning organization where we get a whole bunch of people in a room and say, what does all this look like? But tell me, Chelsea, what was the thought process to make this a standing committee?
Really, it was simply the number of people and the idea that it would carry forward. I've heard in the city ranks that this issue has been talked about for 20 years or so, and no action, perceived action has been taken. So I guess the idea was, let's get it out, let's get it official, and let's start moving forward. To Connie's point, it's kind of, we're ready to take action now with some projects that we looked at and spoke about with PUSD. There's some real actionable items to move forward with.
Yeah, this is already out there and has been out there for a while. And while I appreciate the mayor's comments and Councilman Montoya's comments about, the ad hoc committee, I have to say that a standing committee means we really mean it this time. And so, my choice would be for a standing committee. I think that we have the horsepower to get the people together who really know what they're doing and know what needs to happen in order to make this all work, like Councilwoman Cantelmi was talking about. So, my preference would be a standing committee.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Two comments. I don't know that initially there's too much importance, whether it's an ad hoc committee or a standing committee. I think let's get a committee going. Certainly an ad hoc committee could transition into a full-time standing committee, but I think the important thing is we start moving. If it's been talked about for 20 years, we need to do something. Number two, I think a long-term standing committee is probably a long-term strategy because affordable workhouse housing is always going to be a need. It's not like we're going to fill this need in 5 years and it's not going to be a need 10 years from now, 15 years from now. It's going to be a constant need. So I think a long-term standing committee probably in the long run is the best way to go. My last comment addresses a concern that Councilman Montoya brought up of a broad-based coalition of individuals. And I mentioned to Chelsea 2 weeks ago after the meeting that I think one of the people that we need to invite is the tribe. And the reason I bring that up is because when you look at the city of Prescott, the biggest issue affecting our ability to have affordable housing is the lack of land. Well, the tribe has a lot of land that is undeveloped. And if we could work in cooperation and partnership with the tribe and maybe get workforce housing built on tribal land, because there's land available. We don't have land in the city for affordable housing. So I want to publicly make that recommendation that we reach out to the tribe and say, can we work together? You've got land, we have a need. Can we work something out for affordable housing in our community?
Councilman Tenney.
Thank you, Mayor. If this were potentially a shorter-term problem or likely to be a shorter-term problem, I'd be in favor of a shorter-term committee. It's clear that this is a longer-term problem, so I'm in favor of a standing committee for this.
Very well. Any other Councilwoman Cantelmi?
Well, let me just back up just a little bit from what I said previously. Maybe what we should do is have a stakeholder meeting to see how much money each one would put up, so we have a budget to start with, and then actually have a committee of people that can make this stuff happen, because that's going to make a big difference right there. Do we start with 10 units? Do we have enough money to do 20 units? I know the need is great, but maybe if we have the stakeholders all come together with one meeting, we can get a better idea of how many units they actually really need, how much money eventually we're going to have, and are they willing to put up some money money for the need, and then go about getting all the professionals in there that need to make this happen, because there are so many of them.
Well, that certainly could be a function of the committee, once it's formed, to invite stakeholders forward to make their presentations on how a potential project, what size and scope, and what the eventual costs per unit are. And they could deliberate that and decide on how best to move forward. You know, I'm always of the impression that government doesn't create jobs. They can create the opportunity for the private sector to be able to fill those needs. So it's not up to the city to fund this. It's up to the committee to try to identify how best to create a condition that the private sector can then provide the product. Councilman Montoya?
I think Councilman Tenney was before me, maybe.
Either way, Mayor.
Comment? Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on Councilman Cantoni's comment. I really appreciate that, but I would agree with the mayor. That's probably something that this committee could do once it's formed. It's probably not a pre-formation step. It's maybe step 5 after we get the committee formed, rather than step, A or B before step 1, is what it sounds like to me. Really good idea, and probably premature at this point. We don't know exactly which direction we want to go with this. That could be very well one of the things the committee does, and maybe an early step, but probably not a pre-formation to the committee step.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. To that point that Councilman Tenney was making, I will say in some of the preliminary discussions that I had when I sat down with Councilman Tenney and city staff, I think in my assessment, there are already stakeholders in conversations that I've had, developers in this town, construction folks in this town, who are willing to put skin in the game, and they're already there. I don't think you need to. I shouldn't say they're already there. They're already willing to show up and at least put some, put their shoulder into doing some work. One of those people that I've talked to is Mike Fan, who's very much involved and views this as a thing that he cares about in a community that he cares about. And I think there's plenty more people in Prescott who feel the same way, who can do it. And going back to kind of the mayor's point, I think is, in my mind, when we passed the water policy earlier this year, I got a lot of feedback from folks in the development industry that we had really put a nail through the coffin of affordable housing in Prescott, because we had so hemmed in our ability to do further development. Respectfully, I disagree with that assessment, but I do think we have an obligation as city leadership to do exactly what the mayor's describing, which is facilitate that conversation. We're not going to, no one up here has the power that I'm aware of to just wave a wand and create affordable housing in Prescott. But what we do have the ability is to identify stakeholders and say, we take this issue seriously, we want your insight, we want your input, come have a seat at the table. And I think, I can see both sides of the argument for standing and ad hoc. I will agree with the assessment. This problem isn't going to go away in a year. It's not going to go away in 2 years. Frankly, I would like to believe that we could get our arms around it at some point where it's never going to be fully solved, but we at least have something in place where we're rolling the rock up the hill, even if it's Sisyphean. That I will take that as an outcome. But I will tell you, it's something that I care deeply about. Having grown up in this town and being an 18-year-old kid who rented my first apartment from Kathy Roosing, I know what it's like to struggle to get housing in this community. And it used to be when 20 years ago, when I was starting out, you just knew people and that's how you got in. Now I think even if you know people, you can't get in. And so I am passionate about finding a solution, whether it's we start out as an ad hoc or move to this. I can see both sides, and I'm open to whatever the overwhelming consensus is. But we have to do something, and I think this is one of those things where we could create a problem where we fall prey to paralysis by analysis, where if we dither too much on this and try to find the perfect solution, we'll do nothing, and 2 years will go by, and someone will say, gosh, have you guys ever even considered doing something about workforce housing? So that's my main concern is I want to see us move the ball forward. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, once again, I'm glad we're having this conversation because it's important that we as a city work with the private sector and help incentivize these projects. And in my research, HUD has a program where they are willing to loan money for workforce housing. So I think we can work together with the federal government, the developers, the city to incentivize, maybe waive fees, donate property, and solve this problem because it's not going to solve itself. Thank you.
Councilwoman Cantelmi.
One last comment. Just to clarify, I think our role as a city would be able to facilitate this, because if you're talking about the heads of the hospitals, the heads of the schools, what opportunity do they have to get together? And you're right, Kathy, I think as a city, we can facilitate some of this. We can make permits come out quicker. We can get engineering. We can help guide them. Not that I'm saying the city needs to throw money in the pot necessarily. I'm saying that we can facilitate the main stakeholders by giving them the tools they need. And I'm just hypothetically going to say that, let's say the head of the hospital. He doesn't have a background in construction, nor does he have design, land acquisition, contracts. These are all parts to make this happen, but I think by facilitating that dialogue with these people, and I do think it's important to establish, make sure everybody understands the kind of money we're talking about, the kind of needs to make this happen. We need to know from them how many units would they like to have. That may not be possible, but that's the other part that the committee can perform is basically educating what's realistic to a lot of the stakeholders too. And because sometimes there is not there's no base for the understanding of how you get from A to Z. So that's all I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Councilman Tenney.
Yeah, just really quickly, Mayor. For those of us who were in the study session a couple of weeks ago, very clear that the city is one of the main stakeholders here. We need housing for our firefighters and our policemen and our streets department workers, et cetera. So I appreciate that we're talking about all broadly the stakeholders, the school district, the hospital, et cetera, and absolutely that's the case. But some of the very main stakeholders are sitting to the right and left of us here.
Mayor Pro Tem.
And I just would like to remind people that we have a VA here, and the city has been partnering with the VA to provide housing for the homeless veterans in remodeling the officers' quarters and also constructing new housing on some vacant VA land. And I think those are very exciting projects that do show that we are committed to helping our population, our unhoused population. Thank you.
Mayor. Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael, can you give us some idea, like from a staff perspective, who would be supporting this committee? Or have you thought that much about it?
She's not looking over here. Chelsea, are you going to be supporting this committee? And I think that this issue is going to be complicated enough that I would probably attend these meetings as well. I think that there's enough value in having the city manager sit down, especially if we're talking about also having a dialogue with the CEO of the hospital and head of the school system. I think that this is kind of a highbrow committee or ad hoc committee.
Councilman Shishka.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, Chelsea, I've been on a lot of committees that sit around and talk about stuff, and they bloviate, and they talk about their high mission. We need movers and shakers in this situation. We can't just talk about it. So I'm wondering if 7 is enough. Just kind of thinking out loud.
Well, if you'd like me to respond, I mean, 7 seems like a good number as far as keeping it I don't want to use the word corralled, but it's easier to have a strong dialogue and come to consideration and come to recommendations for council with a small-ish body. However, I think a couple more wouldn't hurt, but we just stuck with the 7 number.
Well, my issue is that at the very least, we need to have people who are not only movers and shakers, but also people who are gatherers, who can gather qualified people around them to be able to make this happen.
Absolutely. And to the prior comments, we also, staff has been reached out to from various organizations, out-of-town developers that do workforce housing in other communities that are used to pulling the grants, that are used to, finding all of the patchwork of funds that are necessary to get these kinds of projects off the ground. So we've heard from them. We've heard from many community stakeholders. Everybody is raring to go. And I think to Councilwoman Cantelmi's point, there's a lot of knowledgeable people already in the community, and staff has done a lot of research already that, first or second meeting, there may be recommendations coming out already because we have so many low-hanging fruit concepts and projects that we're looking at. I would imagine that we can push things forward fairly quickly. And with the people that we've already talked to, they are movers and shakers. They recognize that this is a today problem. It's a yesterday problem. It's a today problem. And to make any kind of headway, we got to start acting now. So I think the momentum is there, and we just need to channel it and open the doors.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think we've discussed this, so I think we're ready to make a decision. We have public comment?
We do, Mayor.
Okay.
Lucinda Grant.
Hello, my name is Lucinda Grant from Prescott. I've been praying about this issue, so you're an answer to my prayer, because I have been asking God to help us have a homeless and general housing ad hoc committee. So when you talk about a workforce committee, I think it isn't big enough. I'd want to see a housing committee that not just addresses the workforce, but the homeless. It seems like you see these as two separate groups, but they can overlap. And so I also see a problem with the workforce needs in this area where they don't always have proper education for some jobs. It's not just the seniors that are having problems with computers. Some people are less well educated, and we don't always have the beginner computer classes. Everything seems so computerized. It's just too hard to start a job sometimes if you don't know all this stuff. And so we need to have, like, maybe Yavapai College or the regional center out there in PV to work more with computer classes and other lower level educational classes to help more of the less well educated become workforce ready. We need more full-time and permanent jobs. I see a lot of jobs are part-time or temporary, and this is not how you can really pay your bills, you know what I mean? And if people are homeless, they're in the street, they may get arrested, mostly at night there, and then they have a criminal record. If you have a criminal record, it's hard to ever work again because you've got the job applications and the rental applications saying, have you ever been an ex-convict? And this can even upset people that are trying to get in the military because military doesn't take ex-convicts. So we're having a problem trying to get people trained and hired. And it's not just the cost of living and inflation. And please try to have more housing assistance for shelters. We do have the Salvation Army men's shelter now for the winter only, but all summer there's been no real free shelter for men. You know, some charge small amounts, or they're not emergency, or they're full, and we really need more emergency shelter space for men and women, more low-cost multi-unit housing, more rental assistance around here to help prevent homelessness. And these shelters don't really have good regulations. I know you kind of over-regulated the recovery homes out of business here some, but be careful of this. But the shelters seem to not have many regulations. They're mostly night shelters. And so in the daytime, people are, you know, maybe hungry, and they're looking for food, and they don't
Ms.
have the
Grant,
money.
please conclude your comments.
Okay, and so they're just out there, and they don't really have day shelter services, just night shelter services, and so they may need more help with training to be employed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion on this, the creation of this standing committee.
I move to adopt resolution number 2022-1843.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-1.
And I just want to say that I'm not in objection to this committee and its efforts. Again, I think, as I mentioned before, there's such a broad scope of concern here, and I'd like to see it focused a little more before we move into a permanent committee, but that's the decision of the council. So it will be created as a standing committee. All right, I think we have one more item on the agenda.
We do. Approval of city contract number 2023-096 with ePlus Technology Incorporated for security information and event management software.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Nick Keegan, IT Department. I want to say that it's hard to follow something like workforce housing that's very fundamental, foundational to a community with something that, as a random IT person, seems highly arcane, technical, and not really that interesting in the grand scheme of things. So I'm not going to stand here and talk to you forever about this. What I'm looking for here is assistance, essentially, that IT people with cybersecurity can't be everywhere. That's just how it is. You have to sleep. You have a lot going on. So basically, they got to add additional people. But those people aren't going to be uniformly good at identifying a threat and knowing what to do about it. So what most organizations end up doing at some point is use technology, automation. And that automation sits there and watches patterns. If it sees the right patterns, it tells you. And you prioritize those patterns for what things you care about. And if you're really fancy, you automate actions for those. So in the middle of the night, if something bumps you, you cut it off while you're sleeping. And then afterward, you come in and figure out what the deal was. So having said that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have, listen to any feedback you may have, and see what we're going to do.
Comments and concerns?
No concerns.
I know this is an area that I've been very concerned about for a number of years. It seems like every organization, whether it's one of the credit agencies, some very substantial organizations that have been hacked into their systems, accessing their database, whether it's malware or some of these other phishing efforts that have really damaged a lot of systems and caused municipalities great costs. Whether it's ransomware or other things like this. So having an outside agency to be able to monitor potential attacks on our system, I think is something that's absolutely necessary. And I can't tell you how many times I've read about systems where they thought that they were totally secure, but they didn't have the ability to step outside of their system and see where are the vulnerabilities. And I think this addresses that issue, and I think it's when you consider it's a 3-year contract, not to exceed $173,000, it's a pretty economical insurance policy for our system. So with that said, any other comments or concerns?
Just a real quick question, and maybe I may have missed this in your documentation. If so, I apologize. The mayor referred to it as an insurance policy, and I'm hopeful that's the case. We're going to put this money into it if there was an attack and, there's some kind of ransomware or whatever. Is this group going to say, we got your back, we were the ones responsible?
No, it's more of a de facto insurance policy. It's a hedge bet against me missing something, or someone in IT could have stopped something, but they were sleeping. Someone in IT could have seen a pattern that's bad, but they were off chasing some other thing for the organization. There is a lot of, and we have cybersecurity insurance. It's increasingly common that those policies, real insurance policies, require this kind of system to make sure you're doing your due diligence. Sure. You're not just kind of freestyling it to see what happens and like, ooh, maybe we'll get hacked today, maybe we won't. I don't know. It's something at some point for government especially is going to be mandated to be done because it makes a lot of sense.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, it kind of creates a firewall so that the chances of having an attack occur are going to be recognized and responded to immediately, rather than waiting for somebody working in the office or coming in late happens to miss something that is suspicious, so that even if we need to access our insurance, chances are that we're going to be made whole on it and not be damaged in the process. Very good. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2023-096.
Second.
Motion is second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right. We're going to adjourn this meeting, but I thought I'd bring up a quote, especially since we're approaching the Thanksgiving holidays. So this is a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Cultivate the habit of being grateful for everything that comes to you and give thanks continuously. This meeting is adjourned.